Say, I wanted to share with you a family favorite recipe that we found a couple of years ago. It is paleo almond flour crackers with sesame seed. It's low carb, delicious, and super easy to make, so let's jump right in. The first thing you'll need is 1 cup of almond flour, or you can use almond meal, whichever one you have available. I prefer to use the almond flour. You'll also need 3 tablespoons of sesame seeds. Give it a nice little crunch, a little texture, and a nice little toasted sesame flavor, which is just delicious. You also need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, or you just do what I do and just put a couple of grinds in there, add it to your taste. And then you'll need 1 egg beaten. Add the egg to your dry goods and stir it up so you get a nice kind of sticky dough mixture. And then what I do is I'll take some olive oil and I will pour some out on a sheet of parchment paper that's been cut to the size of my baking pan. And I'll spread it out nice and thin so you get a nice even coating. This is important so that the dough doesn't stick to the parchment paper. So you want to cover it nice and thoroughly because you're going to roll this dough out pretty thin. And you actually want to do that to 2 sheets of parchment paper because you're going to put your dough on the bottom one in a nice ball and then cover it with the second sheet of parchment paper and then flatten it out so it's not sticking to your rolling pin either. Like I said, get a nice even coating. It can be kind of therapeutic. You feel like you're painting or something. Have a little fun with it. Can't hear it, but I'm doing the Bob Ross impression. It's a happy little cracker right there. So like I said, turn your dough out onto your first sheet of parchment paper. Hannah giving instructions. Throw it into a nice ball, and what you actually want to do too is break it up into 2 smaller pieces. So I like to ball it up and kind of flatten it out a little bit. And then I'll break it up into 2 parts so you get a nice thin cracker, 2 equal parts, and set one aside. Flatten it out a little bit, parchment paper, and then cover it with the second one. Then you take your rolling pin or handy bottle of wine and roll it out nice and flat. You want them no more than 1/8 of an inch thick so they get nice and crispy. If they're too thick, they're kind of chewy and tasty, but not as good as they can be when they're nice and thin. And then very carefully separate the 2. If you're not careful, if you go too fast, you'll end up lifting some of the dough with you, and then it just makes a mess and you gotta start over. Then you take your pizza cutter and you slice it up into cracker size. You want to do this before you bake it, otherwise they'll just crumble when you try to cut it. But this way you get nice perforations. It makes it easier to break apart later on. Then you just want to cover it with some salt and pepper over the top. Again, add it to taste. mentioned earlier is you'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And so once your oven's preheated, you move the sheet of dough to your baking tray and go put it in the oven. And after about 15 minutes, go ahead and pull out that delicious crackery goodness. A nice golden brown, crispy, and delicious. And there you have it. Like I said, simple, quick, nice and easy. If you like what you saw, please feel free to subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you next time.